Hi, I'm Bart Hanson. I'm the owner and operator of CrushLivePoker.com. The following hand comes from our call-in show that we record at 4:45 p.m. Pacific Time every Monday. If you want to call in your hand, check out the phone number in the description.
I'm good. I got a hand back from Vegas, actually.
Okay.
Uh, yeah. So this is played in the Win 2-5 game.
Okay.
So Villain is a reg that I played with a little bit over the summer and seemed decent, but didn't have any real reads. So just played like a session or two with him at the table.
Okay.
So
Hold on one
middle
second, Pete.
position.
Hold on one
Okay.
second, Pete.
Conference locked.
Okay, so win 2-5 no limit, right?
Yep.
Yep. Okay.
And we start around 1500 or 1600 effective.
Okay.
So middle position, who's not the villain, limps in. I'm in the cutoff with two black tens, and I make it 25. Villain calls on the button, and the limper calls as well.
Okay. So you've got two black tens. You make it 25 from the cutoff over a limp. Button calls, main villain, and the limper calls.
Yep.
Okay.
Flop comes 9-7-4 with two hearts and one diamond. Check. The limper checks. I bet 35. I bet a little smaller into two people.
Yep.
The button raises to 125, and the limper folds. So now it's back to me, 90 more to call.
So what's the deal with this guy on the button? I know this win game is sort of interesting, right? Because it's almost like a Commerce 5-10 game, right? Sort of, from what I heard. If you've played in that game before. Yeah.
Yeah, so Villain seems like a decent reg, seems sort of like an online kid, but no like actual reads to back that up. I mean, my impression is he seems good and he seems like an online sort of theory-based kid, but like not a ton of hand histories to back that up.
Well, I mean, obviously you're going to continue on here with all your overpairs right now, right? I mean, you don't have a heart, which remember we talk about this quite a bit on top section, which is actually it's not good for you now, but it becomes good for you if the turn is not a heart, right? Like if you had a heart, it would be better. You'd rather actually have tens with a 10 of hearts so you could continue on heart turns. And then when we move to the turn, and if it's not a heart, now it actually becomes better for you not to have a heart because now you block some of your opponent's, or you unblock some of your opponent's flush draws, right?
Yeah.
So I assume the limper folds and you call.
Yeah, liver folds, I call.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So the turn is the three of clubs. I check, and villain bets 260.
So 9 of hearts, 7 of hearts, 4 of diamonds, 3 of clubs. You've got black tens. Hero checks. Villain 1 bets 260. I mean, I would call again and then obviously evaluate rivers. I mean, there's going to be a lot of, nut changing rivers and things like that. But it just seems like if you call again here, I mean, what's the difference really between your hand and any overpair besides the fact that obviously if you have aces or kings here, you have more equity against some sort of flush draw, right? That he could be raising on the flop, but it would just have to be like some sort of two overs or something like that. But I mean, obviously, I think that you have to still call now.
Yeah, I agree. I think flop and turn are fairly standard. It's mostly the river that I think gets a little interesting.
So the pot is now 520, 770, somewhere around 850, something like that.
Yeah, around there.
Yeah. Okay.
So the river is the jack of clubs.
Okay.
So I check, and now villain jams for 1300.
Well, certainly interesting. I mean, if you obviously, I mean, if he does have some sort of draw here, you don't have a heart in your hand, right? Maybe tens blocks like, well, it doesn't block a backdoor 10-8 of diamonds type of draw. 5-6, of course, has come in, right, on the flop. So the jack is probably sort of inconsequential. I mean, 10-8 comes in, obviously. So,
yeah,
10-8 and 5-6 are there. and some of the busted heart draws that he might do this with obviously have missed. What kind of draws do you think he would do this with that are missed though?
I thought mostly busted heart draws. I mean, the two main straight draws do come in pretty
Right,
much.
right.
I guess, yeah. Um, I thought it was interesting because I'm not sure if like a standard 2-5 reg would. I got like a little suspicious if he would take this sizing with even like pocket nines for value.
Uh-huh.
It just seemed like super polarizing. Or
What about
like
what
at
about
least,
any set though?
yeah, that's what I mean. I think any set,
Okay.
I think he would bet smaller. So
Yeah.
it sort of seemed like he was sort of saying he had a straight or nothing.
Uh-huh.
And like 5-6 is still there, but other than that, having 2 10s is a pretty good hand, blocking 10-8 obviously, which is an open ender on the flop, which gets there.
Right, you're blocking 10-8,
But
but I mean, he's not supposed to necessarily raise. You don't have the 10 of hearts in your hand, which is a 10-8 of hearts raise, and then if you were to
yeah,
really
so
look
like
at 10-8 of diamonds too, right? That would be the backdoor open ender. You don't have that either.
yeah, so even though hearts missed, that's what one of the things I was thinking is it's probably better to have the 10 of hearts on the river, even though hearts missed, right?
Uh, you mean so that he doesn't have the 10-8 of hearts? You mean
Yeah,
if he's properly raising, right? I mean, we're sort of reverting to like optimal play, right? We talk about a lot
yeah.
about this on top section, and are people actually raising with the right types of hands? I would tend to fall back, Pete, on just that. I don't. I mean, hey, if you got a live read, you got a live read, and you think the young guy is trying to push you off an overpair, then fine. It really depends. I think it's probably very, very close to being. I mean, he's basically betting 1.5 times the pot, right? So,
Yeah.
in this particular case, you sort of have to fall back to what would be quote unquote MDF here, right? Like, he's basically risking what, 60%? He needs to be right on this bluff. What, like, I mean, if he were to bet a pot size bet, right, you would need to defend with half the hands that you get here with for value. If he's betting pot and a half, I think that means that you need to defend with what, 40% of hands? I want to say off the top of my head. If it's pot and a half.
I think that's what it is off the
Yeah.
top of my head.
Yeah.
I did actually, it was a while ago, but I did run the MDF on this, and tens was pretty close.
Well, but then also though too, the blockers come into play too. You're not necessarily calling
Yeah,
linearly here, right? I mean, the blockers
yeah,
are going to be more
definitely.
relevant, right? So, I mean,
Yeah,
I think it's probably pretty close. I mean, like, what if you had aces here? You know what I mean? Like
I
aces
think
with
I
no
would.
heart.
Yeah, I think I definitely would fold aces with the heart before tens. I think tens is probably the best overpair to call. Other than maybe you could argue that I think tens is probably the best overpair to call, and that's sort of what I found in my MDF is that like
If you had tens with a
it
10 of
fold.
hearts, like if you had 10 of hearts, 10 of diamonds, it would be really good, right?
Yeah, that would be the best for
Yeah.
sure.
So so did you end up making the call? Obviously, aces with the ace of hearts is a bad call because it's a good call on the flop, or it's a very easy call on the flop. But now he doesn't have the nut flush draw that we block a lot of his bluffs. So here, Pete doesn't block some of the bluffs, or excuse me, he blocks some of the nuts, some of the value with 10-8. But it would be better to have 10 of hearts, 10 of diamonds here because then he wouldn't have any of those combo, or he wouldn't have any of those combo draws that we lose to in the form of a straight, right? So it sounds like you called.
I actually let it go after taking for a while.
I mean, I think it's probably
And
pretty close, obviously.
yeah, he unfortunately showed me the king of hearts.
He showed you the king
So
of hearts. Wow.
yeah,
Interesting.
I thought my thinking on the river was like it seemed overly polarized, which I thought made my blockers even better.
Yeah.
But I ended up like just deciding that I didn't obviously have time to like run MDF in the moment. I decided I probably had enough better hands, and that also people just don't make this big of bluffs that often at 2-5. But
Well, that's
I
the
don't know.
thing.
I think
Here's
yeah,
that's really where the deviation is. I mean, if you're talking about strict optimal play and you think that tens is one of the better hands to call with because of the blockers, then fine. But I just don't think that people are bluffing all that optimal in this spot. They're also supposed to have give ups too, so you can obviously revert to overfolding because people are under bluffing, right?
yeah.
So
I definitely did that in general. I think it was just the sizing that made me a little bit suspicious. I think if he had maybe bet like 750 or 800, I think it's almost, like I said, I don't say it's a ton, but almost maybe an easier fold. That just seems like a lot more likely to be sort of all the sets for
Yeah.
value as well.
By the
Yeah.
way, thank you for the call, by the way, Pete. I appreciate it. It's a good call. By the way, some people are asking what MDF is. MDF, I've talked about it before. MDF is minimum defense frequency, and it also oftentimes will get confused with pot odds. But basically, what it means is that how many hands do you have to defend so that your opponent cannot bluff profitably? So if you're looking at a pot size bet, let's say that the pot is $1,000, and your opponent bets $1,000. If he can get you to fold more than half the time, he's printing as a bluff. So what it means is that you have to defend basically the percentage that the opponent is laying himself on a bluff. Normally you don't deal with overbets here, which is why it's a little bit hairy. I think it's 40%. But if your opponent, say, bluffs half the pot, or let's say he bets half the pot, 500 into 1,000, he's getting a price of 33% on his bluff, meaning that if he can bluff you 33% of the time, he's printing. That means that you have to call with 67% of the hands that you get there with. The higher the bet size, the less you have to defend. Here at 1.5x, I think Pete needs to defend with 40% of his hands. Full pot size bet is 50%. Half pot size bet would be 66% from Peter's perspective, etc., etc. Hey guys, if you like what you've seen here, please click on the subscribe button and you'll get notified every time we put up a new video. And if you want to check out crushlivepoker.com for the first month free, use the code YTA200. Click on the link right there.